It's late. The world outside has gone softer. Traffic has thinned, voices have faded, lights in other windows are switching off one by one. Somewhere other people are already deep in sleep, drifting through dreams they will barely remember. But your mind has chosen this moment to become fully awake. Your body is tired, your eyelids are heavy, yet behind your forehead there is a restless brightness, a constant hum, as if your thoughts have gathered for a meeting you never agreed to attend. You turn on the pillow looking for that familiar position that usually means, now we rest. For a brief second you feel it. Your shoulders relax, your jaw unclenches, the blanket settles around you. Then a single thought slips in. It might be something small, a sentence you said earlier, an email you still haven't answered, a memory of a look on someone's face. It would be harmless on its own, but it leaves the door open. Another thought follows, then another, until the room inside your head feels crowded. You replay a moment from the day, running it again like a clip on a screen. This time, you imagine a different version, a better reply, a smarter decision, a kinder reaction. You watch yourself doing it right and feel that familiar mix of regret and frustration. The scene has already happened, yet your mind keeps acting as if enough replays could somehow edit the past. What should be finished and untouchable suddenly feels alive again, close enough to argue with. Then your attention jumps ahead. Tomorrow appears in front of you like a long corridor already filled with potential problems. You see yourself waking up tired. You see the messages waiting, the tasks stacking up, the conversations you are not ready to have. You imagine how each thing might go wrong. You picture awkward pauses, criticism, disappointment, unexpected news. You do not think of these things once and move on. You rehearse them, switching angles, adding sharp details. With every mental rehearsal, your chest tightens a little more, even though nothing has actually happened yet. Your body reacts to imagination as if it were reality. In moments like this, there is a subtle feeling of being cut off from everyone else. Not just because you might be the only one awake in your home, but because no one else seems to be locked inside this exact storm of thoughts. Other people seem to lie down, close their eyes, and simply drift into sleep. You lie down and step into a very busy office in your own mind, full of unfinished paperwork and urgent alarms. You might even scroll through your phone for a moment, see people laughing, streaming, chatting, and the contrast makes you feel even more stuck in your invisible struggle. At some point, you probably try the most obvious solution. You tell yourself to stop. Enough. Stop thinking, just sleep. It sounds reasonable. It is the advice people give so easily. Don't worry so much, let it go, clear your head. But you notice, again and again, that thoughts do not respond to orders. The more strongly you demand silence, the louder they come. Don't think about that, you say, and the mind immediately turns back to exactly that, like a child staring at the one toy it was forbidden to touch. The effort to stop thinking becomes another thought, another layer of pressure. So tonight we will not start with a fight. We will not try to slam a door on every thought and force the mind into obedience. Instead, we will move a little closer and look at what is really happening when you say you are overthinking. We will treat this habit not as an enemy to destroy, but as a part of you that has been trying very hard to keep you safe and has simply forgotten how to rest. The goal is not to switch off your mind like a machine. The goal is to understand it well enough that its grip on you can soften. Imagine this audio as a long, slow night drive with someone you trust. You are in the passenger seat, watching empty streets and quiet buildings slide by. There is no rush to arrive anywhere and no test waiting at the end. You do not have to remember everything that is said or apply it perfectly. The point of the journey is to give your mind a different way of looking at itself, to make a little more room between you and your thoughts, to remind you that you are not the noise inside your head. On this drive, we will borrow the perspective of people who studied the mind long before our modern world existed. The Buddha watched thoughts rise and fall and saw that they behaved like waves on the surface of a deep sea, always changing, never the whole ocean. The Stoic philosophers noticed how much pain comes not from events themselves, but from the stories we tell about those events and the disasters we imagine in advance. The Taoist sages observed rivers and clouds and seasons and learned how to move with life instead of constantly pushing against it. Their language was different, their days were quieter, but the restless mind they described is very similar to the one keeping you awake now. As you listen, you do not need to concentrate in a rigid way. You are allowed to drift in and out. Some sentences will touch you, others will slide by. That is fine. The whole direction of this is away from harsh judgment and towards a softer relationship with yourself. Treat these words like background music for your thoughts. Let them be there, not as commands, but as gentle reminders that another way of relating to your mind is possible. Before we go any further, notice something very simple. You are breathing. While your thoughts have been replaying the past and rehearsing the future, your breath has quietly continued its work. Air moves in, air moves out. Your chest or belly rises and falls. This has been happening the whole time, whether you paid attention to it or not. Thoughts can travel years backward or forward. The breath only ever happens here, in this exact moment. You do not need to make your breathing special. You do not have to count, deepen, or control it. Just notice that it is there, like a small, steady rhythm underneath the noise. Your mind might still be busy, but alongside that busy mind, there is also this simple physical movement that does not ask for arguments, decisions, or explanations. It is proof that not everything inside you is chaotic. Some part of you is quietly doing exactly what it needs to do. What you call overthinking is not proof that you are broken. Often, it is the sign of a mind that is imaginative, sensitive, and determined to protect you from pain. It replays situations in case there is something to learn. It tries to predict every twist in the future so you will not be caught off guard. It scans for danger, rejection, or failure before those things have the chance to reach you. The intention under all this activity is protection. The problem is that this protection has lost its sense of timing. It is like a smoke alarm that screams not only when there is a fire, but every time someone makes toast. You do not need to hate this part of you. You only need to help it learn when it is safe to stand down. That is what this journey is about. Not forcing silence, but teaching your own mind, gently and repeatedly, that it does not have to be on high alert all the time. As understanding grows, your relationship with your thoughts can shift from panic and resistance to familiarity and a quieter kind of control. For a moment, bring your attention from your head down into your body. Feel the weight of your head on the pillow, the contact of your shoulders with the mattress, the way your arms and hands are resting, the heaviness of your legs. Notice that gravity is holding you. You are not floating in a space made only of worries and plans. You are lying in a real room, on a real bed, supported by something solid. The mind may be racing through dozens of imaginary scenes, but your body is only in one place, and that place is this moment. Allow yourself to sink just a little deeper into that support, as if the bed were offering to hold some of the weight you have been carrying all day. The thoughts in your head might still be saying, "You should have done more. You need to figure everything out. You must stay in control." But the reality of right now is simpler. You are lying down, breathing, held by the surface beneath you, surrounded by a quiet that is always a little larger than the noise in your mind. This is where our journey begins. Not in a perfect state where you never overthink again, but in this very human situation of being tired and wired at the same time. From here, we can start to look more closely at what overthinking really is, how it differs from healthy reflection, and why it keeps returning, especially at night. There is no rush. You are already in the only place where any real change can happen, this present moment, exactly as it is. Before we can calm the overthinking mind, we need to see it clearly. Most people describe overthinking as thinking too much, but that's not quite accurate. You can think deeply for a long time about something important and feel inspired, creative, even peaceful afterward. Overthinking feels different. It feels like movement without progress. It feels like running on a treadmill while your mind insists you're traveling somewhere far away. Imagine a car stuck in mud. The driver presses the accelerator. The wheels spin faster and faster. Mud flies everywhere. The engine roars, but the car doesn't move forward. Energy is being poured out, but nothing in the outside world actually changes. This is what happens in your mind when you are overthinking. You are burning fuel without gaining distance. You replay conversations and choices, but you don't reach new insight. You simulate future disasters, but you don't come to a calm decision. You ask the same questions. Why did I do that? What if this happens? What does it mean? Over and over, as if repetition alone could magically produce certainty. There is a simple way to feel the difference between healthy thinking and overthinking. Healthy thinking has a direction. Even if the topic is difficult, there is a sense that you are moving towards something. A choice, a plan, a clearer understanding. At some point, you feel a natural enough. You choose a path, or you accept that more information is needed later, and you put the problem down. Overthinking, on the other hand, has no natural stopping point. The same themes loop endlessly without resolution. You keep chewing on the same mental material long after all the flavor is gone. Notice how overthinking tends to speak in certain phrases. It loves the words, what if? What if I fail? What if they are angry? What if I never fix this? What if something goes wrong and I won't be able to handle it? Each what if creates a small movie in the mind, a short scene where things go badly. If you watch enough of these inner films in a row, your nervous system responds as if you've actually lived through all those failures and rejections. You feel tired and defeated before you've even taken a step. Overthinking is also fond of should have. I should have known better. I should have said something different. I should have left earlier. I should have tried harder. These thoughts drag your attention backwards into situations that are already complete. There may be lessons to learn from the past, of course, but overthinking rarely stops at simple learning. It becomes a quiet form of self-punishment, revisiting the same memory not to understand it, but to condemn yourself again and again. If you pay attention, you'll see that overthinking rarely brings anything new. The same ideas circle around in slightly altered costumes. When the mind is in this state, it is not exploring reality. It is spinning inside its own stories. There is often a physical sensation that comes with it. Pressure in the forehead, tightness in the chest, a restless feeling in the stomach. The body is informing you that you have shifted from useful reflection into mental overdrive. Ancient teachers saw this pattern long before the word overthinking existed. The Buddha compared the human mind to a monkey leaping from branch to branch, never satisfied, never still. That image is even more fitting today. Overthinking is the monkey after a double dose of caffeine, jumping not just between branches, but between entire forests, from past to future, from fear to fantasy, without ever pausing on the solid ground of the present moment. The Stoic philosophers noticed that human beings suffer not only from what happens, but from the opinions and narratives we attach to what happens. They saw people tormenting themselves with imaginary catastrophes and harsh interpretations. For them, the mind could be a wise guide or a cruel jailer, depending on how it was trained. they would probably recognize modern overthinking instantly as the mind acting as a jailer, locking you in with your worst assumptions. Taoist sages describe the natural world flowing effortlessly from one state to another. Rivers do not argue with their banks. Seasons do not debate whether they should change. Nature responds to what is actually present, not to what might be present in 100 possible futures. Overthinking is the opposite of this natural movement. It is responding to shadows and guesses as if they were solid objects. It is rehearsing storms that may never arrive. There is something important to understand here. Overthinking is not just an intellectual mistake. It is an emotional and nervous system pattern. It is often driven by fear, shame, or a deep need to feel in control. If you listen carefully to your own mental loops, you will often hear a frightened voice underneath them asking, "Will I be safe? Will I be loved? Will I be enough?" The thoughts on the surface might be about work, money, relationships, or health, but beneath them, the mind is searching for reassurance. Tell me it will be okay. Once you see this clearly, a small shift becomes possible. Instead of telling yourself, "I'm such an idiot for thinking like this," you can say, "Oh, I see. My mind is spinning again, trying to protect me. It hasn't realized that this is not helping." That simple recognition doesn't instantly stop the thoughts, but it changes your relationship to them. You move from being inside the storm to watching the clouds from a little distance. You might even begin to give your experience names. This is planning. This is problem solving. And this right now is overthinking. When you notice you have crossed that invisible line between useful thought and unhelpful spinning, you don't need to attack yourself. You can simply acknowledge, "I'm stuck in the mud again," the way a kind driver might notice that the wheels are slipping. From that awareness, you can gently ease off the mental accelerator instead of flooring it even harder. Overthinking is not your enemy, but it is not your master either. It is a habit, a pattern your mind has practiced over and over until it starts automatically, especially at night when everything else is quiet. Just as habits can be learned, they can be unlearned or softened. The first step is exactly what you are doing now, looking honestly at what overthinking is, how it behaves, and how it feels in your body and emotions when it takes over. With this clearer understanding, we can turn to a question that affects almost everyone in the modern world. Why is the mind so overloaded in the first place? Why does overthinking seem almost built into the way we live now? We'll explore that next. If you could place your current mind into the body of someone who lived a few hundred years ago, the first thing they would probably notice is the noise. Not just the physical noise of cars, sirens, music and voices, but the invisible noise of information, opinions, images, and messages pouring in from every direction. Our nervous systems were not built for the volume and speed of input we receive every day. Overthinking is, in many ways, a natural reaction to an unnatural environment. For most of human history, people's daily attention was focused on a small circle of life: the immediate family, the local community, the weather, the work of finding food and shelter. News traveled slowly. There were long stretches of time when nothing dramatically new demanded the mind's attention. There was boredom, of course, and hardship, but there was also space. In that space, thoughts could rise and fall at a human pace. Now, consider a typical modern day. Within minutes of waking up, many of us have already opened our phones. Instantly, we connect to a world of headlines, crises, debates, advertisements, and highlight reels of other people's lives. We see political tension, natural disasters, celebrity drama, economic fear, and carefully curated images of success and beauty. All of this reaches us before our own mind has even had the chance to notice how we are feeling this morning. The brain is constantly trying to sort, prioritize, and make sense of this flood. Is this important? Is that dangerous? Do I need to respond? What does this mean for me? The result is a nervous system that rarely experiences true rest. Even when you are physically safe in your room, your mind feels as if it is standing in the middle of a crowded marketplace with everyone shouting at once. Technology has brought remarkable benefits, but it has also given us a kind of mental treadmill that never stops. Work follows us home through email and messaging apps. Social comparison follows us into our bedrooms through social media. The mind is always half listening for the next notification, the next update, the next demand. Over time, this conditions the nervous system to stay on alert. When you finally lie down at night, your body may be tired, but your mind doesn't believe it's allowed to turn off. There is also the pressure of constant comparison. In the past, you might have compared yourself to a small group of people you actually knew. Now you are silently measuring yourself against hundreds or thousands of images and stories, careers, relationships, bodies, talents, lifestyles. Your brain keeps a running list of all the places it thinks you are behind or not enough. This list becomes fertile ground for overthinking. Why am I not there yet? What am I doing wrong? What should I change? These questions do not lead to calm, focused decisions. They spin into self-doubt. Another factor is the illusion of endless choice. On the surface, having many options is a privilege, but psychologically it can be overwhelming. Faced with countless possible paths, the mind can become obsessed with choosing the perfect one. What if I decide wrong? What if there's a better option I haven't seen yet? What if I commit and later regret it? Instead of using thought to make a clear decision and move forward, the mind uses thought to endlessly postpone action, trying to think its way into a risk-free life that does not exist. The modern world also blurs the boundaries between work and rest, day and night. Screens bring daylight into the darkness, stimulating the brain when it should be winding down. You might check one last message, one last video, one last article, but each new input is a small spark in the mind, another invitation to think, react, plan, or worry. By the time you put the device down, your brain is still lit up inside, even if the room is dark. It is no wonder then that overthinking often peaks at night. When external distractions finally quiet down, all the unresolved impressions of the day rise up for review. The brain begins sorting through them, trying to file and organize everything it didn't have time to process properly. The worries that were pushed aside during the busy hours ask for attention. If you don't know how to meet them gently, the whole process can feel like an inner attack rather than a natural sorting. It's important to understand that this is not a personal failing. You are not weak or strange for finding it hard to rest in such an environment. Your brain is doing the best it can with the signals and habits it has learned. Overthinking is partly the result of a brain that has been trained to be on almost all the time, scanning for information, reacting, predicting. When you ask it to suddenly be quiet, it doesn't know how. This is where ancient wisdom becomes surprisingly modern. The Buddha lived long before smartphones, but he understood the value of simplifying attention, of training the mind to rest on one thing at a time. The Stoics lived before social media, but they knew what it was to be surrounded by gossip, politics, and public opinion. They learned to distinguish between what they could control and what they could not. Taoist sages lived without electric light, but they understood the importance of moving with natural rhythms instead of constantly resisting them. Their practices were, in effect, ways of calming an overloaded mind, even if the overload looked different in their time. Today, we need these skills even more. We need to relearn how to move attention deliberately instead of letting it be dragged around by every new stimulus. We need to recognize how many of our thoughts are simply echoes of what we have consumed, not deep truths about who we are. Seeing the modern overload clearly is not meant to make you feel hopeless. In fact, it can bring relief. When you realize that your overthinking is not just you being broken, but a natural outcome of the world you live in, some of the shame falls away. From there, you can begin to make small, compassionate adjustments. A quieter evening, fewer inputs before bed, gentler expectations of yourself. Your mind is not a machine built for endless processing. It is a living part of you that needs rest, boundaries, and kindness. To create that kindness, we need to look more deeply at what sits beneath the spinning thoughts. Often, we will find three familiar forces: fear, the need for control, and perfectionism. These are the roots of the storm. That is where we will go next. If you listen closely to your overthinking, you will notice that beneath the surface topics, work, relationships, money, health, there are three main currents driving the mental storm: fear, control, and perfectionism. They are like three invisible hands constantly reaching for the steering wheel of your mind, trying to keep you safe in ways that often exhaust you instead. Fear is the most obvious. The human brain is wired to survive, and a big part of survival is predicting danger. In ancient times, this might have meant scanning for predators or noticing signs of conflict in the tribe. Today, the dangers are usually less physical and more psychological: rejection, failure, loss, humiliation. Overthinking is fear trying to see every possible bad outcome in advance. It tells itself, if I can imagine every way this could go wrong, I will be prepared. Nothing will surprise me. The problem is that life is not a math problem that can be solved by considering every scenario. There are always more possibilities than the mind can imagine. So fear never reaches a point of complete satisfaction. It always finds another angle, another what if, another detail to worry about. Instead of feeling prepared, you end up feeling drained. Your nervous system has lived through dozens of imaginary crises, and your body carries the tension of those battles. Control is closely related. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned the belief: if I can think enough, I can control what happens. Overthinking becomes a way to avoid the vulnerability of not knowing. You may feel that if you ever stopped thinking and simply trusted life, things would collapse. So you stay mentally busy, tracking everything, monitoring everyone, trying to anticipate every shift. Your mind becomes a security guard, pacing the same corridor all night, checking doors that are already locked. The Stoic philosophers recognized this habit and offered a simple but powerful practice. Separate what you can control from what you cannot. You can influence your own actions, your effort, your honesty, the way you speak and respond. You cannot control other people's reactions, the exact timing of events, or the ultimate outcome of every situation. When the mind refuses to accept this and tries to control the uncontrollable, overthinking is the result. You find yourself mentally rewriting other people's behavior, imagining speeches you wish you could deliver for them, or catastrophes you want to prevent by sheer mental effort. Perfectionism is the third route. On the surface, it can look like a harmless drive for excellence, but perfectionism is more than wanting to do well. It is the belief that anything less than perfect is unacceptable, shameful, or dangerous. When perfectionism is in charge, overthinking becomes a way to avoid making mistakes. You revise every decision in your mind 100 times. You analyze your words before and after you speak. You hesitate to act because you are waiting for the moment when you feel completely sure. And that moment rarely comes. This perfectionism often has a history. Perhaps you grew up receiving love and praise, mainly when you performed well, achieved something, or behaved flawlessly. Perhaps you learned that mistakes led to criticism, rejection, or anger. Over time, your mind concluded, if I can be perfect, I will be safe. If I can think through every move, No one will have a reason to hurt me or leave me. Overthinking becomes a form of self-protection, even though it harms you in the process. Fear, control, and perfectionism combine into a powerful inner force that keeps the mind spinning. Fear whispers, something bad might happen. Control answers, then we must think about it until we find a way to prevent it. Perfectionism adds, and whatever we do must be flawless, or we are not good enough. This trio does not understand rest. It believes that any pause in thinking is irresponsible. When you see these patterns, it can be tempting to respond with more self-judgment. I'm such a control freak. I'm too scared. I'm too perfectionistic. But adding blame to fear does not free you. It simply adds another layer of pressure. A more helpful response is quiet curiosity. Instead of, "What's wrong with me?" you can ask, "What is my fear trying to protect? What is my need for control afraid will happen if it lets go? What does my perfectionism think is at stake if I am imperfect?" Often, you will find a younger part of yourself behind these patterns. A child or teenager who felt unsafe, unseen, or unworthy, and who developed these strategies to cope. Overthinking may be that younger part still trying to run the show, still convinced that its vigilance is the only thing standing between you and disaster. It does not realize that you are older now, that you have more resources, that not everything depends on its constant effort. From a Buddhist perspective, these patterns can be seen as attachments. Attachment to safety, to approval, to certainty. The more tightly we cling, the more the mind struggles. The Buddha did not teach that we should have no preferences or desires at all, but he did warn about the suffering that comes from trying to hold on to what cannot be held, or trying to control what cannot be controlled. Overthinking is one expression of that tight grip. From a Taoist perspective, fear, control, and perfectionism are examples of fighting the natural flow of life. Instead of responding to the present moment as it actually is, the mind tries to force reality to match its imagined ideal. The more it pushes, the more rigid and exhausted it becomes. The Taoist alternative is not apathy, but a softer, more responsive way of moving through the world, where you do your part and then allow events to unfold without constant interference. Recognizing these roots does not instantly dissolve them, but it does make it easier to pause when the storm rises. The next time you notice your mind spinning at night, you might gently ask yourself, is there fear here? Is there a need for control? Is perfectionism driving this? Simply naming the driver can loosen its hold. You are no longer just a passenger in the storm. You are starting to see who is steering the wheel. To calm the storm, we must also understand how deeply it affects the body. Overthinking is not just a mental event, it is a full-body experience. Your nervous system remembers every worry and carries it like tension. To move toward peace, we have to include the body in the conversation. That is where we will go next. When you say, "I can't stop thinking," what you often mean is also, "I can't stop feeling this tension." Overthinking is not just a pattern of thoughts. It is a state of the nervous system. Your body becomes tuned to alertness, as if danger were nearby, even when you are lying safely in your bed. The racing mind and the tight body feed each other in a loop. Anxious thoughts create anxious sensations, which then trigger more anxious thoughts. The human nervous system has evolved with a simple, powerful purpose: to keep you alive. When it perceives a threat, it prepares you to fight, flee, or freeze. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your pupils widen, your digestion slows. In a real emergency, this response can save your life. The problem in modern life is that the same system reacts not only to actual danger, but also to imagined or remembered danger. A difficult conversation from earlier in the day, or a worry about next week's bills, can trigger the same physical cascade as a loud noise in the dark. At night, when your external world is quiet, Your internal signals become more noticeable. You feel your heart beating faster. You notice a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a restlessness in your legs. The mind senses these sensations and starts asking questions. Why is my heart racing? Is something wrong with me? Am I getting sick? Am I losing control? These questions generate more fear, which in turn intensifies the sensations. This is how a small ripple of anxiety can become a wave of overthinking and panic. From the Buddha's perspective, thoughts, emotions, and sensations are all part of one continuous flow of experience. He invited people to observe this flow without immediately reacting to it, to notice that sensations rise, peak, and fade like everything else. But when your nervous system has been stuck in a heightened state for a long time, it can be very hard to believe that anxiety will pass. It feels permanent, and the mind rushes to build stories around it. One of the most compassionate things you can do for yourself is to recognize that your body is not your enemy. When it becomes anxious, it is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to protect you with the tools it knows. Overthinking often begins with the body's alarm and then continues the alarm in mental form. The mind thinks it is solving the discomfort by analyzing it, but it usually just adds more fuel to the fire. This is why purely mental solutions, telling yourself to just relax or stop worrying, often fail. They ignore the fact that your nervous system is still in a state of threat. Imagine trying to reason with a smoke alarm that is blaring. You can explain calmly that there is no fire, but until you address the sensor or the environment, the alarm keeps ringing. In the same way, to calm overthinking, it helps to include the body, to send signals of safety back through the nervous system. These signals can be surprisingly simple. Slowing your exhale, for example, tells the body that it is safe enough to move out of fight or flight. Gently feeling the weight of your body on the bed reminds your nervous system that you are supported, not in immediate danger. Placing a hand on your chest or abdomen, with a sense of warmth and reassurance, can begin to counteract the internal message that you are alone in this. Stoic philosophers did not talk in terms of nervous systems, but they understood the importance of living in a body that can be easily disturbed. They encouraged practices that trained both mind and body to endure discomfort without exaggerating it. They knew that if you treat every sensation as a crisis, you will never be at peace. Their approach was not to suppress feeling, but to interpret it more calmly. Over time, repeated patterns of overthinking and anxiety can create a kind of memory in the body. Certain situations, words, or even times of day become associated with tension. Your shoulders may rise whenever you think about work. Your stomach may twist when you see a particular name on your phone. Your chest may tighten simply because it is night, and you have learned to associate night with mental struggle. In this way, the body is like a diary that remembers every stressful chapter, even when your conscious mind has forgotten the details. The good news is that the body can also learn new patterns. Just as it learned to react with tension, it can learn to relax more quickly when given the right conditions. Gentle, regular practices that connect you to physical sensations honestly, without judgment, begin to rewrite the body's memory. You do not need to force yourself into perfect calm. You only need to offer your nervous system small experiences of safety and rest again and again. When you next find yourself lying awake, noticing your heart beating and your thoughts racing, you might try something different. Instead of instantly asking, "What's wrong with me?" you could say internally, "My body is trying to protect me. It thinks there is danger." Then, rather than joining the panic, you become a calmer presence within yourself. You might feel the contact of your body with the mattress, the temperature of the air on your skin, the simple fact that you are breathing. These are not dramatic techniques, but they are ways of gently telling your nervous system, right now, in this moment, you are physically safe. This bodily safety is the foundation on which deeper insights can rest. Once the nervous system is slightly calmer, you can begin to observe your thoughts with more distance. You can explore the teachings of wise people about the nature of the mind without feeling overwhelmed. One of the clearest of these teachers was the Buddha, whose observations about thoughts remain profoundly relevant to overthinking today. That is where we will turn next. Long before the modern language of anxiety and overthinking existed, the Buddha sat beneath a tree and watched his own mind. He saw thoughts appear, stay for a while, and disappear. He noticed that they arose from conditions, memories, sensations, intentions, and that they passed away when those conditions changed. He realized that thoughts are events in consciousness, not solid truths. This insight is at the heart of understanding overthinking. When you are caught in overthinking, thoughts feel heavy and permanent. A single idea, I'm not good enough. Something bad will happen. They don't like me. Can sit in the center of your mind like a stone. You circle around it again and again, decorating it with evidence and imaginary scenes. It feels as if the thought is describing reality. The Buddha would invite you to look more closely. Where is this thought exactly? Can you touch it, weigh it, or hold it? Or is it more like a passing cloud, a pattern of energy that seems real only while it is present? From a Buddhist perspective, thoughts are not the enemy. They are simply one of the many changing aspects of experience, like sounds, smells, and bodily sensations. The problem begins when we cling to them, believe them without question, or define ourselves by them. Overthinking is what happens when the mind takes its own stories too seriously, mistaking them for absolute truth. The Buddha suggested a different way of relating to thinking, watching it rather than being it. Instead of saying, I am anxious, you might notice, there is anxiety. Instead of, I am a mess, you might see, there is a thought that says, I am a mess. This small shift in language reflects a deeper shift in identity. You begin to recognize that you are the space in which thoughts appear, not the thoughts themselves. Imagine sitting by a river. Leaves float past on the surface of the water. Some are bright, some are dark. Some catch your attention for longer than others. You do not have to jump into the river and grab each leaf. You can watch them go by. Thoughts are like these leaves. Overthinking is what happens when you forget you are on the bank and start thrashing in the water, trying to control the flow. Buddhist practice often begins with observing the breath, not because the breath is magical, but because it gives the mind a stable, neutral object to rest on. As you watch the breath, thoughts will inevitably arise. You remember something you said. You imagine something that might happen. You feel an emotion. The instruction is simple. Notice that thinking has appeared. Gently label it thinking and return to the breath. Over time, this trains you to see thinking as a process, not as a command. In the context of overthinking, this skill is invaluable. When your mind starts spinning at night, you can begin to notice, planning is happening, or worrying is happening, instead of, I must solve this right now. The moment you recognize a thought as a thought, you create a little distance. You are no longer fully merged with it. You might still feel its emotional echo, but you are also aware of being the observer. The Buddha also spoke about impermanence, the fact that every experience, no matter how intense, changes. No storm lasts forever. No emotion, no thought, no sensation remains exactly the same. When you are caught in overthinking, it feels as if the mental storm will never end. But if you pay careful attention, you can see that even your most persistent worries have gaps. There are moments, however brief, when your mind gets distracted, when you notice a sound, a sensation, a stray image. The worry is not as continuous as it claims to be. Seeing this impermanence can soften the grip of overthinking. Instead of believing, I am always like this, you might see, right now there is a lot of mental activity, but it is changing moment by moment. This doesn't magically erase discomfort, but it prevents you from turning a temporary state into a permanent identity. Another key Buddhist insight is that many thoughts are automatic and impersonal. They arise from conditions, your upbringing, your culture, your recent experiences, your current body state. A thought like I'm a failure may feel deeply personal, but it is often just the echo of old voices, parents, teachers, peers, or a harsh inner critic you learned to copy. When such a thought appears, you can ask, who taught me to think this way? Is this voice telling the truth, or is it just repeating an old story? Over time, this questioning weakens the authority of unhelpful thoughts. None of this means you should never think or plan. The Buddha did not advocate an empty head. He encouraged wise reflection, compassion, and clear seeing. The point is not to eliminate thought, but to stop being enslaved by it. When you know that thoughts are passing events, you can use them when they are helpful and let them go when they are not. Imagine again lying in your bed, the mind starting to spin. Instead of tightening around each worry and following it into a long story, you might begin to see the worries as clouds drifting through a larger sky. You feel your body on the mattress, your breath moving in and out. Thoughts appear about the past, about tomorrow, about who you are. You greet them not with panic, but with a kind of polite detachment. There's a fear thought. There's a memory. There's a plan. You don't have to push them away. You simply don't chase them. This is the beginning of freedom from overthinking, realizing that you are more than the contents of your mind. There is a quiet awareness in you that has been present through every thought you have ever had. It was there in childhood, in joy, in sorrow, in every ordinary day. Thoughts come and go within it. When you rest, even a little in that awareness, the storm of thinking loses some of its power to toss you around. From here, we can begin to bring in other traditions, Stoicism, Taoism, and practical tools that complement this understanding. But the foundation remains the same. Thoughts are not enemies or rulers. They are visitors. You can listen to them without surrendering your peace. When your mind is overthinking, it behaves as if everything in life is your responsibility. Other people's moods, the future of your career, the state of the world, the choices of strangers on the internet. Your mind picks them all up like heavy suitcases and tries to carry them at once. No wonder it feels tired. One of the simplest and strongest medicines for this is an old Stoic idea. Learn the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus began his teaching with a single distinction. Some things, he said, are up to us. Other things are not up to us. Our suffering increases when we confuse the two. What is up to you? Your own choices, your intentions, the effort you put into your actions, the honesty of your words, the way you respond to situations as they unfold. What is not up to you? Other people's behavior, their opinions, the exact outcomes of your efforts, accidents, the weather, the past, and many aspects of the future. When you overthink, you often spend most of your energy on the second group, things you cannot fully control. You replay someone's reaction again and again, hoping that if you think about it hard enough, it will somehow change. You imagine every possible twist of tomorrow's events, hoping to find the one mental preparation that will keep you safe. You relive old regrets, wishing you could rewrite them. The Stoics would look at this and say, gently but firmly, this is wasted effort. Not because you don't matter, but because these things were never fully in your hands to begin with. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor and Stoic writer, lived with pressures and responsibilities far greater than most of us can imagine. Yet in his private writings, he returned again and again to the same reminder. Focus on what is yours to do in this moment. If we could sit beside him as he wrote, we might hear something like this. You cannot control what others will say or how events will unfold. You can only control whether you act with courage, justice, self-control, and wisdom right now. For your overthinking mind, this is not just a philosophy, it can be a practical filter. When you notice your thoughts racing, you can ask, is this something I can actually do something about now? Or is this something I wish I could control but truly cannot? If there is an action available, an apology to make, a task to complete, a plan to write down, then your thinking can become focused and useful. You can decide on one small step and take it. If there is no action possible in this moment, then continuing to spin is like trying to steer the wind. This doesn't mean you stop caring about anything beyond your direct control. Stoicism is not cold indifference. You can care deeply while still recognizing the limits of your power. It is like tending a garden. You plant, you water, you remove weeds, but you cannot command the rain or the sun. Worrying about the weather every night will not help your plants grow. What helps is doing your part with care, then sleeping when it is time to sleep. One of the most damaging effects of overthinking is that it convinces you that everything depends on you getting it exactly right. Stoicism offers a more forgiving perspective. Do your best with what you know now, it says. When new information arrives, adjust. You do not need to see the entire path in detail. You only need enough clarity for the next small step. The rest will reveal itself as you move. Lying in bed, you can try a simple Stoic-inspired exercise. Take one of the things you are worrying about and quietly sort it into two lists in your mind. On one side, my part. On the other side, not my part. For example, if you are anxious about a conversation tomorrow, your part might include preparing one or two honest sentences you want to say, deciding to listen carefully, choosing to stay calm. Not your part, the other person's mood, their interpretation of your words, their history, their final decision. If you see clearly what belongs in each list, your mind may begin to calm. It realizes it does not have to control everything. Over time, this practice can become a habit. When overthinking starts, you recognize it as your mind reaching beyond its proper territory. You gently guide it back. What can I actually do here? And what must I allow to unfold? This shift does not erase all worry, but it reduces the feeling of being personally responsible for the entire universe. Your inner security guard can finally sit down for a moment and breathe. The Stoics understood that peace does not come from controlling the world, but from aligning your expectations with reality. Life will bring surprises, good and bad. People will sometimes disappoint you. Plans will sometimes fail. Knowing this in advance does not mean you give up. It means you are less shocked when it happens. Then, instead of overthinking, you can respond. With this foundation of my part and not my part in place, we can turn to another ancient perspective that speaks directly to your overthinking. The Taoist way of not forcing life, known as Wu-Wei. If Stoicism teaches you what to release, Taoism teaches you how to move with what remains. That's where we go next. If overthinking is the mind constantly pushing, Taoism is the art of stepping back and letting life breathe. Where overthinking tries to control every detail, Taoism speaks of a way of being called Wu-Wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action. It does not mean laziness or passivity. It means acting in harmony with the flow of events instead of struggling against them. Imagine a river flowing around rocks. The water does not argue with the obstacles. It does not stop and complain that the rock should not be there. It simply moves, adjusting its path, sometimes slow and gentle, sometimes fast and powerful, but always following the pull of gravity. The Taoists looked at this and saw wisdom. They believed there is a natural way that life tends to move, a larger pattern called the Tao. When we align with it, our actions feel smoother, our minds less strained. When we fight it, we feel exhausted and tangled. Overthinking is a form of this struggle. It is the mind insisting that life must unfold according to its plans and schedules. It demands certainty, guarantees, perfect timing. When reality does not cooperate, and it rarely does, the mind tightens further, rehearsing and reviewing and imagining in an attempt to force outcomes. Taoism suggests another option. Do what you can, with presence and sincerity, and then allow space for things to unfold without constant interference. Wu-Wei is not about sitting back and letting everything happen to you. It is about acting from a quieter place, where your actions arise from clear seeing instead of fear and compulsion. Think of times in your life when you were in the zone, when you were writing, creating, talking, or working, and everything seemed to flow naturally. You weren't overthinking every move, you were simply responding to what was in front of you. That is a taste of Wu-Wei. In the context of your overthinking, Taoism invites you to question the assumption that pushing harder with your mind always helps. There are moments when effort is necessary, but there are also moments when effort becomes a knot. Lying in bed, gripping your thoughts tightly, you are trying to move the river with your hands. Taoism would whisper, let the river move on its own. You are not responsible for every wave. The Tao Te Ching, a foundational Taoist text, often uses images of softness overcoming hardness. Water wears down rock over time, not by force, but by persistence. A tree that is too rigid snaps in the wind, while a flexible branch bends and survives the storm. Overthinking makes you rigid inside. You cling to one perspective and twist it endlessly. Wu-Wei invites flexibility, the ability to say, maybe I don't need to know right now. Maybe I can let this question rest. Maybe the answer will be clearer in the morning. Practically, this can look like small acts of trust. Instead of analyzing every word of a message you sent, you acknowledge that it has already left your hands. Instead of trying to plan every detail of next month, you plan what is reasonable and leave space for the unknown. Instead of replaying a conversation for the 10th time, you gently redirect your attention to your breath, your body, the softness of the pillow, and allow the mind to drift. Taoism also emphasizes living close to your own true nature. Overthinking often pulls you away from yourself. You become tangled in other people's expectations, in comparisons, in imagined standards of success. Wu-Wei asks, what feels natural and genuine to you? Not in the sense of chasing every impulse, but in the sense of not pretending. When you are more honest with yourself about what you truly want and what you truly feel, there is less need for constant mental negotiation. One way to experiment with Wu-Wei is to choose a small area of your life where you tend to overthink and deliberately practice doing a little less. Not nothing, but less. If you usually spend an hour each night replaying your workday, you might decide to spend 10 minutes writing down the key points you need to remember or improve, and then consciously set the rest aside. If you typically craft and recraft messages in your head, you might write one sincere version and send it without further editing. These are tiny acts of non-forcing that teach your mind that things can go well, even when you don't control them obsessively. The more you experiment, the more you may notice that the world does not fall apart when you relax your mental grip. Sometimes, in fact, things go better. Solutions appear when you are not looking so aggressively for them. Conversations unfold more naturally when you are not rehearsing every line. Sleep comes more easily when you are not demanding it. Wu-Wei can also be applied right now to your experience of listening. You do not need to strain to understand every word or remember every concept. You can let the ideas wash through you like water over stones, trusting that whatever is useful will sink in. When you stop trying to squeeze insight from every sentence, you may find that insight arrives on its own, quietly, in the spaces between your efforts. With Stoicism and Taoism, you now have two lenses. One that clarifies what is and isn't your responsibility, and one that invites you to move with life instead of against it. To bring these ideas down into your everyday experience, we need practical ways of pausing the overthinking habit in real time, even for a few seconds at a time. That is what we will explore next. Overthinking often feels like a solid block of time. I was anxious all night, or my mind was racing all evening. But if you look closely, it is usually made of many smaller moments stitched together. Between one worry and the next, there are tiny gaps, brief spaces where your attention could rest on something else. Learning to use those spaces is not about forcing the mind to be empty. It is about giving your system small breaks, like sips of water in a long journey. One of the simplest ways to create a pause is with the breath. Not as a complicated technique, but as a gentle anchor. When you notice your thoughts spiraling, you might quietly bring attention to your next exhale. Feel the air leaving your body. Notice the slight softening that can happen at the end of the breath. You don't need to count or deepen it dramatically. Just let one full, conscious exhale happen, then the next, and the next. Even 3 such breaths can create a small island of calm in the stream of thinking. Another practical pause is to name what is happening. When a strong wave of overthinking rises, instead of immediately entering the story, why did this happen? What does it mean? What if it goes wrong? You take one step back and say, worrying is happening, or planning is happening, or regretting is happening. This simple label does not solve the problem you are thinking about, but it changes your relationship to it. You are no longer fully merged with the thought. You have become the one who notices. You can also include the body in these pauses. Overthinking tends to pull awareness up into the head, as if the rest of your body were unimportant. But your body is a powerful doorway into the present moment. When you catch yourself lost in mental movies, you might gently shift your attention to the feeling of your feet, even if they are just resting in bed. Notice their weight, their temperature, the pressure of the blanket, or focus on your hands, the contact with the sheet, the subtle warmth of your skin. These small anchors remind your nervous system that it exists in a physical world, not only in the imagination. Another helpful pause is what you might call the good enough question. Overthinking often stems from trying to find the perfect solution, the perfect word, the perfect timing. When you notice yourself stuck in this loop, ask, is there an option here that is good enough? Not perfect, not guaranteed, just reasonably kind and honest and workable. If there is, consider choosing it and allowing yourself to rest. The mind may protest, but over time, it can learn that good enough is safe enough. Journaling can also serve as a structured pause. If your mind is swirling with unfinished thoughts at night, you might keep a notebook by your bed and take a few minutes to pour the main worries onto the page. Not writing an essay, just capturing the headlines. I'm scared about tomorrow's meeting. I regret what I said to my friend. I'm worried about money. Seeing these thoughts in ink creates a little distance. You have moved them from the echo chamber of your mind into the outside world, where they can be returned to later with a clearer head. The key with all these practices is gentleness. They are not punishments or tests. You are not trying to earn peace by being the perfect meditator or the perfect journaler. You are simply offering your overworked mind brief moments of rest. Some nights you may remember to do this many times. Other nights you may only remember once. Both are okay. The habit of pausing grows slowly, like a plant that does not seem to change from one day to the next, but over months becomes clearly taller and stronger. It is also important to notice what doesn't help. For example, endlessly reassuring yourself with the same phrases. It will be fine. It will be fine. It will be fine. Without actually believing them can become another form of overthinking. So can searching for certainty on your phone late at night, scrolling for answers that the internet cannot truly provide. You do not have to judge yourself for these habits, but you can begin to see when they leave you more agitated rather than less. Moments of pause are like small stones placed in a rushing stream. At first, the water hardly notices, but as more stones are added, small eddies form, then calmer pools. Your mind is not a wild force that cannot be influenced. It responds to repetition. Every time you choose to take one conscious breath, to feel your body, to name your thinking, you are teaching it a new pattern. Not every thought requires full attention. These micro pauses become even more powerful when woven into a larger rhythm of your day, especially the hours before bed. The way you enter the night matters. If you rush into it with a mind already overstimulated, overthinking will have rich soil to grow in. If you design your evenings with a bit more care, you give your nervous system a chance to slow down before your head touches the pillow. That is what we'll look at next. Sleep is not just a switch you flip. It is more like a shore you approach. Overthinking often takes root in the gap between your daily busyness and your attempt to sleep without a transition. One moment you are scrolling, replying, watching. The next moment, you expect your mind to be still. It is like driving at full speed and then suddenly slamming on the brakes. The car may stop, but your body still feels the motion. Creating gentle evening rituals can act as a gradual slowing down, making it easier for your mind and body to remember how to rest. Think of the last hour or two before bed as a kind of landing strip. The goal is not to be perfect, but to make small choices that signal safety and calm. One of the most powerful signals is light. Bright, blue-tinted light from screens tells your brain that it is still daytime, keeping the inner clock alert. If you can, dim the lights in your environment as the evening goes on. Use softer lamps instead of harsh overhead lighting. If you must use screens, consider lowering the brightness or using warmer tones. These are simple physical changes with real effects on your nervous system. Another aspect is stimulation. During the day, your mind may need constant input to keep you moving, but at night, that same input becomes overload. Scrolling through intense news, heated debates, or fast-paced entertainment right before sleep gives your brain too much to process. You might experiment with a digital sunset, a time, perhaps 30 or 60 minutes before bed, when you put devices aside. Not as a rule to beat yourself with, but as an act of kindness toward your future self who is trying to sleep. What can fill that time instead? This is an opportunity to create small, soothing rituals that your mind will begin to associate with rest. For some, it might be reading a few pages of a gentle book, not something that triggers strong emotions, but something that invites quiet reflection. For others, it might be stretching the body, taking a warm shower, or making a cup of herbal tea. These actions do not need to be dramatic. Their power lies in repetition. Over time, your nervous system learns. When we do these things, we are moving towards sleep. One especially helpful practice is a short brain dump before bed. Sitting with a notebook, you can write down tasks for tomorrow, worries that are lingering, and anything you don't want to forget. The aim is not to solve everything on paper, but to tell your mind, you don't have to carry all of this into the night. It is stored here. You can rest. You might even split the page into 2 sections. To do tomorrow and cannot control. Seeing some worries clearly fall into the second column can reduce the sense of urgency. If you share your space with others, communication is part of the ritual. Letting the people close to you know that you are trying to create a calmer evening environment can help. Maybe it means agreeing on a quieter hour or keeping heavier conversations for earlier in the day when you are more resourced. You cannot control everything in your surroundings, but small agreements can make a difference. Of course, not every evening will go smoothly. Some nights will have unexpected events, late work, or emotional turbulence. In those times, the goal is not to blame yourself for missing your routine. Instead, you can look for the smallest version of your ritual that is still possible. Even 5 minutes of dimmed lights, slow breathing, and writing down your worries is better than nothing. You are still sending a message to your system. I see you. I know this is hard. Let's slow down as much as we can. Over time, these evening habits can reduce the raw material that feeds your overthinking at night. When you lie down, your mind will still think. That is its nature, but it will be less flooded, less stimulated, less tangled in unprocessed input. In that quieter space, deeper work becomes possible, revisiting the story you tell about yourself and your worth, which is often at the heart of overthinking. Many of your mental loops are not just about events, they are about identity. They circle around ideas like, I'm not good enough, or I always mess things up. To truly soften overthinking, we have to gently examine these stories and perhaps begin to write new ones. We'll explore that next. If you listen to all the thoughts that pass through your mind in a day, you would notice certain themes repeating. They are like background music, so familiar that you barely notice them consciously, yet they colour everything you feel. For many people who struggle with overthinking, these themes cluster around one painful belief. I am not enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, not calm enough, not lovable enough. Overthinking becomes a way of constantly checking and rechecking this belief, looking for proof or reassurance. Where do these stories come from? They rarely arrive out of nowhere. They are usually built from many small experiences. A critical parent, a harsh teacher, a painful breakup, a culture that equates worth with achievement or appearance. Over time, your mind weaves these moments into a narrative. It becomes the lens through which you interpret new events. A neutral comment feels like criticism. A small mistake feels like confirmation of your deepest fear about yourself. Your overthinking mind then takes each incident and replays it, trying to defend itself or prove itself, but never quite succeeding. Rewriting the story of you does not mean pretending that everything has always been wonderful. It means seeing that your current narrative is only one possible interpretation. Your mind is like a storyteller that has become accustomed to tragic endings. With patience, you can begin to offer it different plots. Start by noticing the language of your inner critic. It often speaks in absolute terms. Always, never, everyone, no one. You always mess up. No one really cares about you. Everyone else has figured it out. When you hear these words, you can gently question them. Is it literally true that you always fail? Can you think of even one time when you handled something well? Is it true that no one cares? Or are there small, quiet examples of care that your mind tends to dismiss? You do not have to argue aggressively with every negative thought. That would become another form of overthinking. Instead, you can treat them as hypotheses rather than verdicts. When the thought, I am not enough, arises, you might respond, that is one story. It is not the only story. Then you look for evidence of another narrative. Times you have been kind, resilient, creative, or brave. These moments may not have been praised or noticed, but they exist. Bringing them into awareness balances the record. Compassion is a crucial ingredient here. Harsh self-judgment keeps the old story alive. Compassion allows for a new one. Imagine a friend telling you about their overthinking, their fears, their regrets. Would you speak to them the way you sometimes speak to yourself? Would you call them names, tell them they're hopeless, or that no one will ever love them? Probably not. You would recognize their humanity, their struggles, and their efforts. You can begin to extend some of that same kindness inward. This does not mean denying responsibility for mistakes. You can acknowledge where you have hurt others or yourself without collapsing into global condemnation. I made a mistake is very different from I am a mistake. The first opens the door to learning and repair. The second locks you in a prison of shame. Overthinking often amplifies the second voice. Rewriting your story involves choosing the first. You might find it helpful to literally write a different story. In a journal, describe yourself as if you were a character in a novel, seen through the eyes of someone who loves you and sees your whole journey. Include your difficulties and flaws, but also your strengths, your attempts to grow, the challenges you have faced. Describe not just what has happened to you, but how you have responded. This exercise is not about flattering yourself. It is about seeing the full picture, not just the harshest segments. From a Buddhist angle, even this story of you is ultimately fluid. There is no fixed, solid identity sitting behind your experiences. There are patterns, tendencies, memories, and habits, but they are all changing. The more you see this, the less tightly you have to cling to any story, whether negative or positive. You can hold your identity more lightly, which gives you more freedom to change. From a Stoic angle, what defines you is not your comfort or your reputation, but the qualities you practice. Courage, honesty, kindness, perseverance. Overthinking usually focuses on outcomes, how things look from the outside. Rewriting your story means shifting your attention to your inner posture. Am I moving, however imperfectly, toward the person I wish to be? As you slowly adjust the way you see yourself, overthinking begins to lose some of its fuel. If you are no longer constantly trying to prove that you are enough, your mind does not need to analyze every interaction as evidence. You can let some things go unanswered. You can allow misunderstandings to remain unresolved. You can forgive yourself for being human. Of course, living this way requires something else, a willingness to trust life a little more, even when you cannot see the whole map. Overthinking is often a refusal to trust, a demand for absolute guarantees. The final part of this journey is learning to relax that demand and to meet life with a softer, more open heart. That is where we'll go next. Trust is not a switch you can flip on command. It is more like a muscle that may have been strained or injured. If you have experienced betrayal, sudden loss, or painful change, it is natural that your mind would become cautious, even hypervigilant. Overthinking often grows from this soil. The mind decides that if it can just stay alert enough, nothing bad will ever surprise you again. The trouble is that life, by its nature, contains uncertainty. People change, plans alter, accidents happen. No amount of thinking can erase this. You can make wise choices and reduce risks, but you cannot create a world in which nothing painful ever occurs. When the mind refuses to accept this, it ends up fighting reality itself. Overthinking becomes a way of postponing trust, always waiting for one more piece of information, one more sign, one more guarantee. Learning to trust life again does not mean convincing yourself that everything will always be pleasant. It means understanding that you have the capacity to meet what comes, even if it is difficult. It means remembering that, in the past, you have survived things you were sure would break you. It means recognizing that there is more support around you, seen and unseen, than your anxious mind acknowledges. One small way to practice trust is to experiment with letting go in low-stakes situations. For example, you might allow yourself to send a simple message without editing it 3 times. You might let someone else choose the restaurant or make the plan without you overseeing every detail. You might leave a minor task unfinished until tomorrow instead of staying up late to perfect it. These may sound trivial, but they are like small stretches for your trust muscle. Each time you do it, and the world does not collapse, your nervous system receives evidence. Perhaps I do not need to control as much as I thought. Another practice is to notice how often life has carried you without your conscious management. Your heart beats without your permission. Wounds heal. Thoughts arise and pass. Seasons change. Even in your personal history, there were times when you did not know how things would work out, yet somehow they did, in ways you could not have predicted. You may not call this the universe, or fate, or God, but something beyond your conscious planning has always been at play. From a Taoist perspective, trust is closely linked to aligning with the natural flow. Instead of demanding that life obey your timeline, you begin to look for where there is openness, where things seem to move with less resistance. This doesn't mean avoiding all challenge, but it does mean questioning the idea that struggling mentally against reality is the same as strength. Sometimes true strength looks like saying, I have done my part. Now I will let life do what it does. From a Buddhist perspective, trust grows as you see that clinging brings suffering. The more you try to hold on tightly to people, identities, outcomes, the more you fear losing them, and the more the mind spins. When you accept that everything is changing, moment by moment, you may feel sadness, but also relief. You're no longer fighting to freeze a moving river. You can participate fully in life while knowing that it is, by nature, impermanent. Trust also extends inward. Overthinking often carries the message, I cannot trust myself. I will make the wrong decision. I will fail. But if you look honestly, you will see that you have made many good decisions as well. You have learned, grown, and adapted. Even your mistakes have taught you, shaped your empathy, and deepened your understanding. Trusting yourself does not mean believing you will never err. It means believing that whatever happens, you will face it as best you can and learn from it. You can support this inner trust by speaking to yourself in a different way. When facing an unknown, instead of saying, what if I can't handle it? You might try, I don't know exactly what will happen, but I will meet it when it comes. When noticing overthinking, instead of saying, I'm hopeless, you might say, my mind is scared right now. I will be gentle with it. We are learning a new way. Trust is built in small, repeated acts, not grand declarations. Each time you allow a question to remain unanswered without torturing yourself, each time you act without rehearsing every possible outcome, you are teaching your system that it can live with uncertainty. Over time, the urge to overthink every situation may soften, replaced by a quieter willingness to see what happens. As this willingness grows, you may find that you do not need as many words either in your mind or from others to feel okay. Silence becomes less threatening. The present moment becomes more interesting. Sleep becomes more possible. To support this, it can be helpful to end your day and this journey with a simple, gentle practice that gathers together everything you have heard and offers it back to your body and mind as a blessing of rest. That is the purpose of our final chapter. As you arrive at this last part, you do not need to remember all the ideas we have explored. Stoicism, Taoism, Buddhism, nervous systems, stories of self, trust. These are like landmarks we passed on a long night drive. What matters now is not the map, but the feeling of coming home, of finally being allowed to rest. You are lying where you are lying. Feel the simple fact of that. Your body has weight. Gravity is holding you to the bed. The surface beneath you is supporting you without effort. You do not need to earn this support. You do not need to apologize for needing rest. You are a human being, and humans need sleep, just as trees need darkness and animals need shelter. Bring your attention gently to your face. Notice if your forehead is tense, if your eyebrows are pulled together. If they are, imagine there is a warm hand smoothing across your forehead, inviting the muscles to soften. Your eyes have spent the day looking, focusing, processing. Let them rest now, as if they are allowed to sink back into their sockets. Your jaw may have been clenched, holding unspoken words or unexpressed feelings. Let it loosen slightly, allowing your tongue to rest comfortably. Move your awareness to your shoulders. They have carried the invisible weight of responsibilities, expectations, and worries. For a moment, imagine setting that weight down beside you, not forever, just for tonight. You can pick it up again tomorrow if needed. For now, feel the shoulders melt a little into the mattress. Let your arms be heavy. You do not need to hold anything. Notice your chest. Perhaps it has felt tight at times, vibrating with anxiety. Feel the rise and fall of your breath here. You do not have to control it. Just watch it. The way you might watch gentle waves on a quiet beach at night. Inhale. The chest expands slightly. Exhale. It settles. If your mind wanders, that is okay. Each time you notice, you simply return to this small movement. Bring attention to your abdomen. This is often where worry hides, in knots and flutters. Place a hand there, if that is comfortable, feeling the warmth of your own touch. Imagine that your hand is saying to your body, "Thank you for working so hard to protect me." You can rest now. Whether you feel relaxed or not, the kind intention is what matters. Let your awareness move down through your hips, your thighs, your knees, your calves, your feet. Notice the contact with the bed, the blanket, the air. Imagine that each exhale sends a small wave of softness down your body, releasing tension bit by bit. You do not have to feel perfectly calm. You are simply allowing the possibility of a little more ease. As thoughts come, and they will, treat them like clouds passing across a night sky. Some are darker, some lighter, some may bring a small flicker of emotion. You do not have to chase them or argue with them. You can silently name them: memory, worry, planning, and let them drift. Beneath the clouds, the sky remains untouched. Somewhere in you, there is also that quiet sky, awareness itself, clear and open, in which all thoughts appear and disappear. Remember, overthinking is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that your mind has been trying very hard to protect you. You have begun to show it another way. You have learned to tell the difference between useful thinking and spinning. You have seen that not everything is in your control and that this is okay. You have glimpsed the possibility of moving with life instead of against it. You have questioned the old story that says you are not enough, and you have considered the radical idea that you are, in fact, worthy of rest and kindness exactly as you are now. Tonight, you do not need to fix yourself. You do not need to solve every problem. You do not need to plan your entire future. All of that can wait until morning. Right now, your only task is to be here, breathing, allowing your body and mind to slowly unwind. If you like, you can silently repeat a few simple phrases, not as magic spells, but as gentle offerings to yourself. I have done enough for today. I am allowed to rest. Not everything needs to be decided tonight. Thoughts can come and go. I do not have to follow all of them. Say them in your own way, in your own language, whatever feels sincere. Let the words sink in a little beyond the surface of your mind, into the places that are tired of being afraid. As the minutes pass, your attention may drift. You might catch yourself thinking about something completely different. This, too, is okay. Each time you notice, you can return to the feeling of your body, the sound of your breath, the simple sense of being here. Falling asleep is not an achievement you can force. It is something that happens when the conditions are right. You are creating those conditions with every small act of letting go. And if sleep is slow to come tonight, remember that just resting like this, eyes closed or soft, body supported, mind held with kindness, is still valuable. You are giving your system a chance to reset, even if it doesn't happen as quickly as you wish. There will be other nights, other chances. You are on a long journey of learning to live with your own mind in a friendlier way. For now, let this be enough. You, here, breathing, gently loosening the knots of the day. The world can turn without your constant supervision. Life can move for a while without your analysis. You are part of that life, carried by it, not apart from it. Whenever you are ready, you can allow yourself to drift into lighter thoughts, into dreams, into the quiet spaces between thoughts, trusting that you are held, that you have done what you can, and that tomorrow will meet you when it comes.